Oh, hi there. Ollie Anderson here. You're listening to Creative Status. I'm a creative performance coach, help people to bring more realness into their lives and or businesses. This podcast is a place where we talk about how the creative process is ultimately a vehicle for allowing us to move towards more wholeness, more realness in our lives as we make the unconscious conscious, see what we've been hiding from ourselves, seeing how we can become more integrated, seeing how we can step away from the social programming that tells us we should be a certain way or that we should do something that we don't really want to do, step away from the self-hypnosis that tells us to believe some bullshit about ourselves, like we're not good enough or whatever it is. Today's episode is an interview with Petra Bregović. She is a very interesting person who has a lot to say about the dark night of the soul. We break that down. We explore what's going on when people experience this phenomenon known as the dark night of the soul. The short version is it's the end of one version of yourself, and it's basically asking you to step into the next version, which is always going to be more real if you're doing it right. Sometimes it seems like a baptism by fire because it's going to be a lot of difficult, turbulent things that you need to ride through. But that's the short version of what that is. We also talk about nature and climbing and practical things that people can do in order to get to the other side of that process or just to grow more real in general. Petra is a climbing instructor, so she has loads of cool stuff to say about that. So that's pretty much it. Here's the interview coming up. Petra, thank you so much for all the time that you put into helping us organize this conversation. Everyone else, hope you get some good stuff out of this. And I'll see you next time. So yeah, thanks a bunch. Boom. Oh, hi there, Petra. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Creative Status today. We've had quite a lot of conversations, kind of. And in this episode of the podcast, I have a feeling that we're going to dive deeper than we have done before into the dark night of the soul, how that may play a role in the creative process, and then some stuff about nature and all these kind of things, because we're both hippies. Before I start asking you questions, do you feel like introducing yourself? And can you also tell people what you want to get out of this conversation yourself?
Oh, hi, Ollie. Thanks for having me in this podcast. So my name is Petra Bregović. I'm 37 years old. I come from Croatia. I'm Doctor of Science in biology, but my work now is I work as a climbing coach.
Wow.
And work in climbing therapy, working with kids with special needs and motorical difficulties.
Wow.
Well, and what I hope to get from this conversation, I hope I will motivate somebody to live life with more present, life with more joy, with more courage, and to be more creative.
That's awesome. That's a very noble ambition. So hopefully we will attain that as we unravel this conversation. So one of the first things that we started talking about is this idea of the dark night of the soul. So people all over the place, especially online, love talking about a dark night of the soul. Things go wrong in their lives and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. They're going through a dark night of the soul. So what I wanted to do at the start of this conversation is to kind of unpack that a little bit. So 2 questions for you. 1, what is a dark night of the soul, according to you? And 2, how have you experienced it and what did it teach you, if anything?
Okay. So I can tell you from my experience, the dark night of the soul, for me, it is when your whole world just crashed down.
Mm-hmm.
And you question everything you believe, your thoughts, your emotions. In those moments, you have a very low energy. You don't have a will to live. So it's a very, very painful period.
Wow.
For me, they say I was like walking pain. You could see pain on my face, and I felt it also in my chest, everywhere. It's a very hard period, but yeah, sometimes maybe you have to dive deep to be Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. So, based on what you're saying, some external thing happens, and normally it's a bad thing. So, like maybe we lose something, or we might have an illness, or whatever it is. Something happens that ultimately causes us to hold a mirror to ourselves, I guess. And when we look in that mirror, maybe we don't like what we see straight away. And so we have to go through some kind of a transformational process of rebuilding our relationship with ourselves, but also rebuilding our relationship with life. Is that true? And I know you didn't necessarily say that, and I kind of put in words in your mouth, but is there something there?
Uh, yes, first, there are some triggers in my personal life. Like,
Mm,
there was sudden death of my father who died
mm,
of brain cancer.
mm,
And then I realized the problems I have in my life are really
mm,
not the problems, but because, for example, he just want to live longer with us. And
mm,
the second trigger was also in my life. I ended 15 years long relationship. So
mm.
there was a sudden change in my life, and I really in those moments I was struggling to accept that changes
Yeah, yeah.
and to accept the transformation, but also it was
Wow.
changing, uh, like changing in my beliefs, in my
Yeah.
values and what motivates me in my life.
Wow. Yeah. So in both of those examples that you've given, the sudden death of your father and the end of the relationship, both of those triggers are basically an example of you losing something that's really important to you. And one thing that I found is that that is the key thing that sends people into these dark nights of the soul. The idea of loss. We lose something external, but in losing it, the deeper thing that's going on is we also lose a certain version or a certain relationship that we have with ourselves. So, for example, in the case of a relationship ending, I think, okay, once, I'm speaking from experience here as well. Like, once the relationship has ended and the person that we were with is no longer part of our lives, okay, we lose them as an external thing, but also we lose a lot of our internal stuff as well. And by that, I mean, we lose the image that we carry of ourselves as a person in a relationship. We lose the image that we have of the future. We lose all kinds of things, basically. But all of those things that we lose are actually unreal. Because, for example, that image of the future is just an image or idea in our heads. It's not actually something that exists in reality. And I think these dark nights of the soul are ultimately a process of just letting go of an unreal identity that we were carrying and hitting rock bottom because the carpet is swept from under our feet, and we find ourselves in a place where all of the illusions and ways of identifying all the fragments that we were holding on to make sense of life have gone, and we have to rebuild something in the chaos. And I think if we do that right, not that it's a matter of right or wrong, but if we trust that process and we go through it, it always leads to us feeling better in the long run. But whilst we're going through that process, it's very hellish. So, does any of that kind of resonate with what you went through?
Yeah, I can agree with you. You let go of all the stories you are
Mm,
making in your
yeah,
head,
yeah,
and you ask yourself, so what is real? What is staying?
yeah.
For what can I hold
Wow.
on?
Yeah.
And you also in those moments you have like
Wow.
letting go lots of things, but also like decluttering of your life. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
uh,
one thing I'm always saying is what's real is always real. So a major theme of this podcast and all the other stuff that I do, like, is we're either moving towards wholeness or we're blocking ourselves with fragmentation, ideas and illusions that cause us to feel we're separated from ourselves and life, blah, blah, blah. And because wholeness is just always whole, you can't add to it, you can't remove from it. What's real is always real. And so I think there's something going on with these dark nights of the soul where even though we're losing all these things, we're letting go of all these things, what we find is that there was something real to hold onto the whole time. But maybe because our sense of perspective was distracted, or we just weren't paying attention, or we thought we needed to put our happiness elsewhere, we became attached to all of these things that weren't real. And it's a case of what goes up must come down. And eventually, because life is just always life, we end up being reunited with it. And that's ultimately what we all want. And there's something, on the surface, it seems kind of, there's something that it seems counterintuitive, because basically, human beings need each other. We need other people. We want all these amazing experiences and we want to be connected to people and stuff. But the attachment to that is always unreal, something like that. So it's about learning to live in a way where we can appreciate people and things like that, but we're not attached and we're grounded in whatever that real thing is. So I know I've just said loads and I don't know if it made sense, but does that feel right to you, or does it make sense based on what you went
Yeah,
through?
definitely. When you go to the dark night of the soul, you connect more with yourself. And you find, I said, some power, strength in you.
Wow.
And also that you can build your own happiness. It doesn't depend on any other person. You have a choice to build your own happiness on real values. And for me, it was also in those moments learning how to be present for myself, and more present in life. And also learning that happiness is in small things, to be happy with small things, and see really that ordinary moments are really sometimes extraordinary, and be grateful every day for it. So you connect more with yourself, and then by connecting more with yourself, you can connect more with others, and eventually again trust others, and trust life that it will be all as it should be.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about those little moments you just mentioned. So you said, I can't remember exactly how I said it, but like happiness is in these little moments, and they can be quite extraordinary because they're so real. Something I was thinking the other day is a lot of the time, we're running around chasing all these external things, trying to be happy, but ultimately the lesson that everybody seems to keep learning is that in order to be happy, you don't need to do anything, because it's more about what you said. It's more about being present, about being. You still need to do things. Like I'm all about taking action that's inspired to change your life and growing the way that you want to. But ultimately, all these things we do don't necessarily need to be something we do to try and become happy. Because I think when we've been through these dark nights of the soul, not that that's the only way to do it, but when you've been through that purification process, or whatever you want to call it, you realize happiness was there anyway, because happiness and wholeness is the same thing. And so can you tell me more about these little moments and what's going on there?
Yeah, it might sound funny, but sometimes in those moments I felt so much joy that I started to laugh without no reasons. But I think it was like connecting to presence, connecting to that stillness and that dissolution of those old stories, thoughts, beliefs, and really finding the strength inside you that you can do whatever you want, that you can do what you love, and live a joyful life.
Yeah.
But these little moments for me was first was taking care of myself, like how to raise my energy. It was doing yoga. It was going out in nature. Nature has always some grounding effect on me and also make me present. It was also climbing and eating whole food, because you have to raise your energy first.
Yeah.
And then when you take care of yourselves, you can do, as you always telling, some inspire action and go for your dreams. But it definitely, you have to realize that in the moments of presence, you have all you need, all what you need.
Yeah. So there's two things there that I think are really interesting and important that you said. The first thing is about raising your energy first, or doing things that are going to support your energy. And there's physical things you could do, mental things, emotional things. We'll get into it in a second. But also this word that you used, dissolution. Like, dissolution is one of my favorite words for describing this transcendence that you're talking about, where you get out of your ego, you get out of your mind, and you're just in the present moment and you become one with everything. And I think that is our true identity. And when we feel that, even if it's just for a moment, then basically it reveals and reignites the passion and the energy and the joy and all that stuff that's always there anyway, the real stuff. Because what's real is always real. You can't lose anything real, like we were saying. So let's break those two things down. So in relation to raising your energy and everything, I think that is a foundational step. And I think a mistake that I've seen a lot of people make is they jump right into all these philosophical, spiritual, esoteric ideas and theories, and they look for all these complicated things that they can do to try and change their lives. But actually, if you exercise, you sleep well, you drink water, you eat good food, that is a very effective way to build a solid foundation. And if you manage your mindset as well, so you're not stressing yourself out with unreal thoughts and bringing friction to your life by attaching to this fake image that we were talking about earlier, then you can be in a very good position to start taking those inspired actions and doing all that other stuff that is obviously very important. So in a practical way, I know you've mentioned some of them, like what kind of things did you do to raise your energy and get out of this kind of sluggish state you were in when you're going through the dark night of the soul and you were, a bit depressed and all that kind of stuff? Like, what practical things did you do to raise your energy, and how did they help you specifically, I guess?
Yeah. Well, first, I slept. I needed the rest. I didn't have energy for anything. Then I started cooking, and I also took some internet classes about macrobiotics.
Wow.
And I spent like 3 hours in the kitchen every day to raise my energy. But also in those moments, I embrace solitude, because I really had to connect with myself and try to see what I love to do. The second thing was yoga, and I don't mean like yoga stretching. It was like the main thing I like about yoga was breathing during the exercise, because it stops the mind chatter, the everything you are thinking, and So,
Mm.
and the third one was just going out in nature, because I feel more at home in nature than in any city.
Mm. Mm.
And that's where climbing goes in, because
Mm.
you always climb some rock in the nature.
Yeah, yeah. Most.
And
Oh, sorry.
yeah, that's all.
Sorry. So most of those things that you are talking about that helped you, they're all basically about getting you back in your body. That seems to be the main theme, right? So you were in the kitchen, you're making healthy food, not just eating processed crap or whatever, by the sound of it. You were sleeping well, and then you were going out in nature, which involves getting in your body. If you're walking around, climbing, all that kind of stuff, but also it's connecting you on a deeper level to you know who we are as animals and all this kind of stuff. What do you think it is about getting back into your body that's so important in those early stages of coming out of the dark night of the soul, or when you're going through it?
Well, movement is definitely medicine, and by getting back into your body, you connect more with your spirit
Mm, mm,
and leave the outer world.
mm.
I don't know how to better answer that.
No, that's amazing. So the second thing that you said earlier was about dissolution. So I really love this word dissolution because like it really describes the experience itself. Like ultimately, if you have these little moments, these extraordinary moments that you were talking about, where for whatever reason you are taken out of your head and you go immediately into the present moment, you feel this sense of dissolution where your mind and your identity and your body, I guess, to some extent, like they all kind of merge into or melt into whatever it is that you're doing. So for me, I've experienced this, when I do yoga. Like I've probably said this a million times now on the podcast, but like at the end of a yoga session, when I'm in Shavasana, I dissolve, and for that moment until I get up again, I'm basically gone. Like it's just me and life, or just life, because there is no me, obviously. I've had it when I go hiking, and I'll be like in the hills or whatever it is, and I just look around me, and in certain moments, there's no distinction really between me and the environment. It's all just one system, and I'm part of it. And in that moment where I'm just experiencing that, I just feel totally connected, like to everything. So I could rant and rave about that, but dissolution is the process of going from your mind to the present. That's how I see it. So the question for you is, one, how has this dissolution showed up for you? And two, why is it so important to experience that, do you think?
Well, I agree with you, Ollie. It's like dissolution of self and connected to wholeness around you, connected
Mm,
to, I don't know how
mm,
you call it, to oneness.
mm,
And
mm.
I also think it is connecting to our natural state that we forget in this modern life,
Yeah, yeah.
because we are always in a rush, always in some kind of routine, always have some mission to do.
Mm,
And it's really
mm,
our natural state, that stillness and that connecting with wholeness,
mm, mm.
from which should be always our base, our starting point
Yeah,
for
yeah,
anything in a life.
yeah. That's 100% what's going on, I think. Like, ultimately, wholeness is our natural state, but for whatever reason, as we go through life, we forget about it. So we hypnotize ourselves with all these beliefs based on our emotional stuff that we're not good enough, or that we can't do this and we can't do that, and blah, blah, blah. Or we pick up a bunch of social programming from the world and our culture and etc., telling us how we should be. And then we start living according to these unreal scripts that cause us to be fragmented. And basically, we're just running around shadow boxing because we're not in the real world once we've reached that state. And I think the longer we go in that state of being unreal, unconsciously, because most of the time we don't know it, the longer the more time we spend being unreal, the darker the dark night of the soul will be if and when it shows up in our lives. And I think for most people, if we are being unreal, then it's basically inevitable that you will have a dark night of the soul, because if you've been unreal, you're basically disowning so many parts of yourself that exist still deep down there in your shadow. And the shadow is always going to be screaming for your attention. And ultimately, if you keep ignoring what's going on inside yourself, or you keep distracting yourself with this unreal life that people end up living, then you will get to a point where you have to have a dark night of the soul, because through self-destruction is self-resurrection. That's the way I look at it. So a dark night of the soul destroys our life on the surface as we lose things that we're attached to, and so on and so forth. But in that process, the unreal self dies, not that it can die because it's unreal, and the real self emerges. So would you say that in that sense, self-destruction, I know this is a bit of a curveball question, but self-destruction is often part of the healing process? If not always, but often.
Yeah, definitely. You can say you have to lose yourself, or as you say, self-destruction, to find yourself again.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it's something that's just going to happen naturally, or because of unconscious drives and all that kind of stuff, or is it something that some people can escape? And I know we're just kind of speculating, but like based on what you've seen yourself and been through, like
Well,
what do you think?
everybody have problems and struggles in their life,
Mm,
but sometimes like people are very scared
mm,
scared to dig deep when those
mm,
things happen.
mm, mm.
For
Oh,
it can be like
wow.
in our culture we don't talk about that. We don't talk about uh, it is like if you show a fear,
Mm,
that's something wrong, or
mm,
like you're not supposed to be vulnerable. Sorry for English.
mm,
Yeah, or
mm.
you have to all the time be the brave, manage to do everything, don't cry,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
deal with your problems. But sometimes you just
Wow.
have to show your weakness and go to those uh,
Mm,
dark night of the souls, and
wow.
accept that something is changing in your life, and you have
Yeah.
to move something out,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and people sometimes have fear, and they just try to live their normal life
Yeah.
like they did it before. They don't want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, this is really important. And like, I've seen it quite a few times. Like, sometimes people are so close to having a breakthrough that could change their lives forever, but they don't allow the things that need to break because of the fear that you're talking about. And so they don't quite hit rock bottom that the dark night of the soul requires them to hit, because they put systems in place to basically just hold themselves a few feet above the ground in this kind of illusion. Basically, it's the ego fighting to stay where it is. So, for example, instead of hitting rock bottom and going through this process we're talking about, I don't know, they might start taking drugs or whatever it is to distract themselves. They might start having meaningless relationships to distract themselves. They might go get therapy or something like that with a therapist that is just going to talk about surface level problems instead of digging deep. Whatever it is, there's 1,000,003 different things it could be. But the point is, sometimes people are really close to having that breakthrough and hitting rock bottom so that they can self-resurrect after the self-destruction thing we were talking about. But they can't do it. They don't do it because of the fear. So in those cases, what do you think people need to do? Like, how do we know if life is just shit, or if we're on the verge of being able to change things dramatically, if we can push through that fear? Like, is there anything there that you might have learned, like about the difference
Yeah,
between a bad situation and an opportunity, basically?
yeah, that's a very good question. I think you don't have to push fear. You just need to accept it and then try to do something with that fear. Try to
Mm,
go into uncomfort zone.
mm,
And
mm,
for me, climbing. Now I will return to climbing. Has taught me that
mm.
really life begins out of comfort zone,
Yeah.
and we make ourselves those borders, limits in our head, and we
Mm,
are very afraid to go beyond them. But really, like every day, you should do something that is out of your comfort zone, and just
yeah.
from curiosity, see what happens. What
Yeah.
will change?
Yeah.
Maybe your fear was just some. It was not real.
Yeah. How do you find the sweet spot? So in coaching, we always say there's like 3 levels. There's the comfort zone. If you stay in your comfort zone, well, like you said, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to stay in the ego. You're not going to grow. You're not going to expand. Probably you'll stagnate. In fact, you definitely will if you stay there for too long. But if you go too far out of your comfort zone, like let's say I don't know, you were free climbing Mount Everest or something, and you're not ready for it. Well, that's too far, so you're going to panic. But the zone in between is the stretch zone. So you're just stretching yourself just beyond your ego, what you think you're capable of. You find the edge of what you think is possible. Your ego meets reality, and somewhere there, some new truth comes into the equation that is going to allow you to go deeper into life and to do that inner work you were talking about. So maybe we can use climbing as an analogy, but like, how have you found in your life that sweet spot where you're out of your comfort zone, you're stretching, but you're not panicking and basically dealing with a lot of real fear, not the unreal fear, because we've gone too far?
Uh, yes. Well, you have to find some balance
Mm,
when you go out to the comfort zone, and you have to be present when you are
mm,
going out of comfort zone.
mm.
Because if you
Yeah,
are present, you
yeah,
will have a responsibility
wow.
to not go free climbing.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
if you are, well,
wow.
some people are ready for soloing. I mean, soloing, free climbing. But
Mm,
if you are connected more to yourself, you will know more what are your possibilities, what you can do, what you cannot do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely sometimes you have to dream big, or dream more than you can think,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
do things. Sometimes you feel like you don't have energy for that, you're sad, but you have to see that you are something behind your emotions, and
Yeah.
then you put that your emotions, but like you don't ignore them, but put it by
Yeah.
side, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
to do something uncomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
So many important things there. So what you just said about presence, that is key. And like I never thought of it in these terms, but if you're in your comfort zone, you're not present. You can't be, because your ego
yeah.
is the opposite of presence, and the ego is the thing that keeps you in the comfort zone. If you're in the panic zone, well, obviously you're not present because you're panicking. You've gone too far, and so that sweet spot means you're present. You're in a real place, and the reason that presence and stretching ourselves or pushing through the edge are the same thing are because reality itself is always moving. We are always expanding as human beings. We're always growing, going deeper into wholeness. And so being present is about working with that flow. And so that is a super important thing that you just said. And the other thing has slipped my mind. But what do you think about that? The presence thing and
Yeah, I
balance.
like it.
Like it
Thank you
showed.
very much for putting this thing out, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, well, it was you that says it. And the other thing I remembered. So the other thing that's important is what you said about feelings. So a lot of the time, feelings are important, but feelings are temporary. They're not real. And so a lot of the time, we can be more real if we focus on what we want rather than how we feel in the moment. And so in relation to what you said about, stretching ourselves and presence and all this kind of stuff, having a vision is another key thing. So let's say you have a vision based on your real awareness of what you truly want to do, your true intentions, your true values. You have a vision that you want to climb some crazy high mountain without any ropes or whatever it is. Okay, that's a vision based on your real potential and everything. But in the moment, your feelings might start talking you out of it. There's Petra, you're crazy, it's never going to happen. I'm scared, blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe there's some validity there. But if you only ever focus on the feelings, you'll never move towards the vision. And so reminding ourselves of what we want by being present is another key part of this puzzle of, moving in the real direction. And you could apply it to the dark night of the soul as well, maybe. So is that something we could do? How do presence and vision, which we've basically learned from the climbing thing, help us to understand all these things we've been saying about the dark night of the soul? And I know that's another big question.
Yeah. I used to tell myself
Wow.
in those moments when I was in Dark Night of the Soul that I'm not my emotion, my thoughts, or beliefs. I'm something behind that. That was maybe some kind of mantra. But afterwards, when you connect more with yourself, then you find like you can believe your emotions and thoughts, because those things,
Yeah.
how do you say it, there is one line
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you
between
mean.
them.
Yeah.
But definitely, if you have a vision, trust uh, that you can really do some great things that you cannot see clearly in the beginning. and the vision will get more clearer when you start, as you say, to be real. But
wow.
Definitely, maybe we talk about it. You have to trust yourself first, and like nobody can tell you who you are. You have to trust your vision, and then trust the whole process that you could make it. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, yeah, no, you did. So ultimately, the vision, if we do it in the right way, it's going to be real. And like you said right at the start of this conversation, or really early on, you need something real to hold on to, because the only thing you can hold on to is something real. And so normally at the start of these journeys we're talking about, when people go into the dark night of the soul, they feel like, because it's a kind of misperception because of what they've been through, they feel like there is nothing real to hold on to. And so they start to panic because they're scared and all these kind of things. So they're not present in the way that we were talking about. But ultimately, as they go through that process and they start to learn more about themselves, they can go from a state of panic to a state of stretching and expanding and moving with life. And in that presence, somewhere, normally, there'll be the revelation of some kind of a vision, which is actually, I'm going to sound very poetic. It's going to bring the light that is going to start dissolving, to use another one of our favorite words, dissolving the dark night of the soul, so they can start to move towards life again. Something like that. And so all of these things we've been talking about are interconnected, but it basically boils down to that. Be present, choose a vision that's real, and then trust the process. Something like that. So we've covered a lot in this conversation, Petra. How would you basically sum up all of this? We've brought into it a lot of little pieces like vision and trust and getting in the stretch zones where we can dissolve our ego. How would you sum all this up, basically? Like, what are the main lessons that you think this conversation has shared with people?
Okay. For final words, I would say try to be more present in your life. Try to connect more with yourself and trust yourself. Be brave enough to go into uncomfort zone, and also take responsibility for your own life. You can do everything what you can imagine, and yeah, definitely be brave and courageous in your life, and trust the process that everything will be okay.
I think ultimately life is just always trying to bring us back to present, and like we resist it because of things we think we're going to lose along the way. But like you've shown, like happiness, being happy, is in every one of these little moments that exists from one moment to the next. And I guess the only thing stopping us is us, like you're saying. So yeah. So Petra, thank you so much. Have you got any like links or anything like that? Is there anywhere people can find you if they want to talk to you or anything? Like, is there anything like that?
Thank you, Ollie. So you can find me on Instagram page. It's climb.away. And there are some quotes and pictures, so maybe it will motivate you to live life with more presence.
Okay. Well, Petra, I will share that in the show notes. But thank you so much for sharing all this. And maybe we'll do it again one day, because I had a really good chat with you. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Ollie. It was nice chat. Thank you.